I think a lot of us can look back at this year and see that we ended up getting a lot of power creep. Granted, not every unit that was released this year ended up power creeping another unit. However, I do think it's important to highlight the fact that we did also just get a general amount of power creep. Of course, this also means that when we look back at this year, we recognize that some units are pretty much going to stand the test of time, while some other units are going to fall off. As such, I want to go over what I believe are the top 10 units that were released into the normal pool this year. Not seasonals, not legendaries, we're not counting any of those. We're only counting normal summonable heroes. That includes anyone you could get in the normal pool or in the Grail shop, not including seasonals. That's right, Young Innis is not on the list. If they are in the seasonal such as Bertram, then they are considered for the list. However, Bertram's not on this list. I'll be going over my thoughts on the top 10 seasonals later this week. So for now, I'm pretty much just going to go over my thoughts on what I believe are the top 10 units we got this year. Again, to emphasize, not including seasonals and not including legendaries. Good? Alright, let's get started then. Starting us off at number 10 is Ingrid. I believe Ingrid ended up aging really, really well thanks to the fact that she got Flow Guard and Flow Refresh, which basically allows her to make a follow-up attack if she has the speed to do so. However, I think her prowess definitely comes from her PRF Lewin, which is a slaying lance that grants plus 6 speed if she initiates combat or is within 2 spaces of an ally. And then she also deals 20% of her speed as true damage, and if she's 5 speed faster than the foe cannot counterattack, which is just extremely strong. I believe that because of her stat line just being really, really offensive as is, on top of the fact that she just can stack up her speed super easily, she's not going to have trouble triggering her Fire Sweep effect by any means. And I feel like the only units that are going to be able to bypass it are niche null counter disrupt units, or units that can outspeed her. However, I feel that the latter isn't going to be as much of a problem because she is relatively fast, and she's not going to have that much trouble dealing with her foes because she not only gets true damage from her weapon, but her base attack is actually pretty decent. As such, I do believe Ingrid has earned her spot at number 10. She's not crazy broken by any means. However, for what it's worth, I do think what she does have access to, it does warrant her to be on this list, even if it's at number 10. Next at number 9, we have Brave Gatekeeper, who's basically an amalgamation of support and meme. Essentially, his weapon grants attack and speed bonuses to allies within 3 rows or 3 columns, and then the second effect he gets helps him with his survivability, as being near one ally debuffs a foe for attack and res for a maximum of 6, and if he's near 3 allies, the foe cannot make a guaranteed follow-up attack. The latter is going to be a bit tougher against foes that can make guaranteed follow-up attacks because Gatekeeper isn't fast by any means. However, what makes Gatekeeper number 9 on this list is his Obstruct skill, Detailed Report, where it's essentially a mega obstruct skill that prevents foes from reaching over him unless they have pass, which can be really nice for stacking up support. And the cream on the crop from the skill is that foes cannot warp into spaces within 4 spaces of the unit, meaning it disables stuff such as Catria Balls, Wings of Mercy, Escape Route, so on and so forth. And honestly, if it weren't for the fact that this obstruct skill prevents all this kind of warping, I would not put him on this list. Having the ability to disable Catria Balls, on top of the fact that he just has really, really good defensive prowess, I think makes him a really decent support unit in Aether Raid's offense, or even in Aether Raid's defense if you want to run him on defense so you can prevent Gale Force, Wings of Mercy strategies. I think there's a lot of potential that can be made with him. However, I do think because his offensive prowess isn't that good, he isn't any higher. However, as a support unit that can disable Catria Balls and any sort of warping as well as obstruct so foes can't snipe units from the back is really, really nice. And for that reason, I have him at number 9. Next at number 8, we have Pent, who is a really interesting unit who can grant Times Pulse to magic allies within 2 spaces of the unit, which also affects him. And then his second effect essentially grants an attack and speed boost, which is whatever, because his main prowess is really going to come from the fact that he has Times Pulse in his weapon that can also be granted to magic allies within 2 spaces. This means you can run heavier hitting specials, whether that's with a Reinhardt or a dual lift, for example. The fact that this kind of counteracts Pulse Smoke in some sense means that magic foes on Aether Raid's defense are going to have an easier time triggering specials against foes on Aether Raid's offense, especially if they have a Slaying Tome. Having the Slaying Tome and then the movement means they can have instant specials ready to go without any necessary worry whatsoever. And so, for this simple effect, I believe Pent has earned this spot at number 8. Next at number 7, we have Fallen Alegar. I know this one's going to be a bit controversial because I know a lot of people consider her to be one of the best units, if not the best unit in the game right now. However, I'll go over my reasoning as to why she isn't higher. Essentially, Fallen Alegar has an amazing amount of effects, both in her weapon and her B passive. She has Slaying, she inflicts -6 attack and defense on the foe. Both her and the foe cannot make a follow-up attack. If she's transformed, she gets Raging Storm, which is basically Gale Force. And then for her B, she gets Mystic Boost. And on the first hit during the first combat on either phase, she reduces damage from the foe's first attack by 40%, which is incredibly strong when you consider the fact that she's most likely only going to be taking one hit from a foe, meaning that the reduction is always going to be active, provided that she doesn't enter more than one combat. Even so, she has Special Fighter and her B passive as well, so the foes cannot really charge up their specials all too easily. And this is stacked. She is a very, very stacked unit. However, while I still think she is good, I feel like her best performance came out during her debut, as now there are so many counters to Fallen Alegar that it's just unbelievably easy to take her out. And these threats are so common nowadays that I don't feel that Alegar is nearly as good as she used to be. It's kind of like the Reinhardt effect, where Reinhardt was stupidly amazing back in 2017, and IS kept releasing counters to the point where Reinhardt was able to be subdued. And while he's still good, there are definitely enough counters out there to warrant him not nearly as good as he once was. And I'm going to apply the same logic to Fallen Alegar. Fallen Alegar is still a really fantastic unit. However, I do feel that she is no longer as good as she once was. And for that reason, I have her at number 7. Kicking off number 6, we have Volk, who has a Slaying Dagger that grants Spectrum 5 and neutralizes penalties that inflict guard on him, and he gets unconditional accelerated cooldown per hit. This weapon is deceptively really amazing because of the fact that Volk is able to trigger lethality without any sort of issue whatsoever. And the fact that he gets +5 to every stat means he can actually take a hit if he needs to. And the fact of the matter is that while his base defense and res aren't really that high, the +5 he gets from his weapon, on top of the fact that he has Sturdy Impact and a free seal, which you can use for either more defense stacking like Sturdy Blow, or you can run attack defense solo, or whatever you want. I feel that he can reach enough bulk to survive a hit and trigger lethality without any issue whatsoever. You could also replace no follow-up with Desperation after that point if you feel that you would rather try and get 2 attacks out at once. That being said, I do think Volk has one of the strongest nuking potentials in the game right now, and I do think if it weren't for the fact that he has no guard in his weapon on top of the Spectrum 5, he wouldn't be nearly as good as he is. Of course, Slaying and then accelerated cooldown per hit is nothing to scoff at either, because he's guaranteed to get 2 cooldown per hit regardless of the foe's skills, which is really strong. And for these reasons, I feel that Volk has earned a spot at number 6. You could debate as to whether or not Volk should be a bit lower, a bit higher, depending. However, for what it's worth, I do find that Volk is one of the best nukes that we have in the game right now. I think lethality with his stat line and the additional stats he gets from his weapon is enough for him to at least get 1 lethality out, which is really good. Next at number 5, we have Brave Marth. He has Slaying, he has Dragon Effectiveness, he has Spectrum 5, and depending on how many visible buffs are on 3 allies, he could get no follow-up, he could get Vantage, he could get Bellringer, and additional attack, which is really stacked. And then he also has his PRF Shining Emblem special, which scales damage based on his speed, and it also grants Spectrum 6 to him at the start of the turn, and if his special triggers, it grants Spectrum 6 to every single ally, which makes his PRF self-sufficient. I gotta say, Marth is just incredibly stacked in general. You can run him as a Vantage unit with Special Spiral because his cooldown is only 1 for Shining Emblem, so he can always retaliate with Shining Emblem and possibly go for one-shots. He's going to be tanking a lot of hits because he's just a big stat ball. He has no follow-up, so he doesn't have to worry about guaranteed follow-up attacks or any sort of follow-up attack denial. And in general, he's just going to hit really hard, and he's going to be tanking really well, especially if you keep his base kit. However, I'd probably ditch Distant Pressure if you really want to tank more because of the recoil damage. But even so, the fact that he has innate healing per attack means that he's not going to really struggle to keep his health up all too much, especially if he runs a Spartan set. And in general, he's just a really solid unit. And for this reason, I have him at number 5. I don't really have much else to say on him. He's just a really stacked unit. Next at number 4, we have Brave Marianne, who has a damage reduction PRF if she initiates combat, similar to Kagero's Dart, except it's 70% of the foe's first attack. And she inflicts additional debuffs on the foe and neutralizes foes' bonuses to speed and res, which means she's not going to have trouble doubling whatsoever, and her damage output's going to be fairly good. If it were just this, I probably wouldn't have put her on the list. However, I would argue that it's her special that puts her at number 4 because of the fact that she's essentially an offensive dancer that can't be isolated, which is extremely good. As long as she's able to charge up her special, which shouldn't be an issue whatsoever, because she can run Flashing Blade and Quicken Pulse and then Times Pulse, so she's guaranteed to get it on the first hit. As long as a foe has acted, if she initiates combat within 2 spaces of an ally that has already acted, they get to act again. Even with the gravity effect, there's definitely means of getting around it, so it's definitely way more ridiculous than it may seem, because of the fact that you could either just use her on a Catria Ball, or you could use her on a Gale Force team on offense. She's not going to have trouble triggering her special whatsoever, unless there's Pulse Smoke and the foe survives. However, if she can bypass that part, which probably shouldn't be an issue because she neutralizes bonuses to speed and res, meaning she's going to double more often and take out foes a lot more often, she shouldn't have an issue triggering her special whatsoever. And I do believe because of the fact that she just can't get isolated and can provide another action to an ally within 2 spaces, I believe this earns her at number 4. And then we get to our top 3, starting with Brave Erika, who has a Slaying Lance that has cavalry and armored effectiveness, and at the start of combat, if she has at least 25% of her HP active, she gets Spectrum 5 and damage reduction, and if she initiates combat, she gets half null follow-up, which is really nice because she won't have trouble taking hits a lot of the time, and then she will be able to output a lot of damage as a result. Then the cream of the crop of her skill set is her Moonlight Bangle, that not only has Canto 2, meaning that for the first combat of the player phase, she'll be able to retreat for 2 spaces, but she also has Null Guard, and she has what's essentially a big fat Luna depending on the cooldown size of her special. She'll essentially have no trouble taking out any of her foes if she's able to trigger a special because she hits so goddamn hard. And while this isn't necessarily a point to her per se, the fact that Surge Sparrow exists means that she can actually keep her health relatively high with no issue whatsoever, even if she takes a lot of damage with reduced damage reduction. I would definitely say that Erika is a formidable foe that you don't want to be initiated on because of the fact that she's just going to nuke you outright. And because of her nuking prowess, I would definitely say she is number 3 on this list. Going to number 2, we have Ascended Fiorn, who basically neutralizes any sort of ranged unit because of the fact that not only does she have Slaying, but she has Null Counter Disrupt, she has Mystic Boost, and she has Ice Mirror, meaning that she's going to be reducing the foe's attack by a significant amount of damage. She's going to retaliate with that damage. Then she's going to heal back damage after the combat and charge up her Ice Mirror again because Ice Mirror is a 2 cooldown special that becomes 1 from her Slaying. But the fact of the matter is that she's a far save tank with no counter disrupt, meaning staves can't kill her, wind sweep units can't kill her, fire sweep units can't kill her. She counters everything ranged. You can also slap Mystic Boost Seal on her if you want her to heal 13 HP after combat, having the ability to counter every sort of unit and reduce damage by a certain amount because of her Ice Mirror and then retaliate back with the damage is so potent that she has to be at number 2 in my opinion. Granted, there are counters. However, while I do think there are existing counters, I don't think they're nearly as prevalent as someone like Fallen Alegar's counters, which is why I do believe Fiorn does deserve her spot at number 2. And of course, at number 1, we have to have Yuri, because Honorable Blade with his stat line is ridiculous. He has Canto 2, he has Slaying, he has 3 movement, and he gets additional attack and speed. The fact that he has 3 movement is one thing, but I think stacking Canto on top of it just makes him a ridiculous hit and run bot because of the fact that he can just swoop in with an AoE special, kill the foe, return back, dance, and then get out with Foul Play. And speaking of Foul Play, how about that 3 movement swap? You can abuse that so much, especially in the Summoner Duels mode, where movement is pretty much key. So you can pretty much swap in units in and out, left and right, no problem whatsoever. Even though the Canto works once per turn, I gotta say, his offensive stat line with Slaying, Canto, Infantry perks, he's ridiculous. I would definitely say that Yuri is the best pool unit that we got this year. However, that's just my opinion. What do you think? let me know down below. I would love to hear what you have to say. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.